Stress is not a minor inconvenience, nor is it a fleeting state of discomfort. Stress is a silent destroyer. It creeps in quietly, weaving its way into thoughts, tightening its grip around emotions, and wrapping its chains around the body until it feels like every breath is heavy and every step is burdened. It disguises itself as responsibility, as urgency, as necessity, but in reality, stress is nothing more than the thief of clarity, the enemy of focus, and the saboteur of human potential. It doesn't announce its arrival with a warning. It builds slowly, first in scattered thoughts, then in restless nights, then in an overwhelming pressure that convinces the mind that there are too many demands, too little time, too few resources, and not enough strength. Stress paints the illusion that the world is closing in, that every problem is bigger than the power to solve it. It whispers that life is unmanageable and that breaking free is impossible. But this is the grand deception. Stress thrives only when the mind loses sight of what truly matters. At its core, stress is not about the external world. It is not about the demands of work, the expectations of others, or the endless tasks that fill the days. Stress is born within. It is created when focus fractures, when attention scatters, when the mind obsesses over everything except the one thing that matters most. Stress doesn't exist in events. It exists in the interpretation of those events. It doesn't live in problems. It lives in the lack of clarity about solutions. Stress is not an external weight pressing down from above. It is an internal fog that blinds from within. Yet here lies the most powerful truth. The very moment stress appears, the antidote is also present. The solution is not in escaping life's demands, but in mastering them. It is not in avoiding challenges, but in attacking them with precision, direction, and purpose. Stress can be dismantled not with denial, but with clarity. And there is a formula simple, direct, and profound that doesn't just manage stress, but ends it completely. A formula that strips away confusion, that silences the noise, that gives back control. A formula that transforms chaos into clarity, overwhelm into order, and pressure into power. That formula is the RPM formula. It is not a theory. It is not an abstract idea. It is a weapon forged to cut through the illusions stress creates. While most people live as prisoners of reaction, bouncing from one problem to the next, spinning the whirlwind of urgency, the RPM formula provides a path out. It flips the equation. Instead of being consumed by endless problems, it directs focus toward results. Instead of being crushed by meaningless tasks, it ignites purpose. Instead of being paralyzed by fear, it demands massive action. Imagine a moment where stress would normally take over. Too many deadlines, too many responsibilities, too many moving pieces. Normally, the mind spins in circles, jumping from worry to worry. But with RPM, the mind locks on a result, sharpens around a purpose, and designs a plan. Suddenly, the chaos shrinks. Suddenly, and the overwhelm fades. Suddenly, there is clarity. With clarity comes control. Stress cannot coexist with clarity. It cannot survive when results are defined, when purpose is ignited, when action is mapped out. Stress feeds on uncertainty, but the RPM formula starves it by replacing uncertainty with certainty. Stress thrives in hesitation, but RPM kills hesitation with momentum. Stress flourishes in meaningless activity, but RPM transforms activity into achievement. This is why the promise is so bold. The RPM formula ends stress for good. Not because life becomes easier, not because challenges disappear, but because the very mechanism that creates stress is dismantled. When the mind no longer drowns in problems, but instead focuses on results, when every effort is powered by purpose, and when every move is guided by a clear action plan, stress has no room to breathe. It dies in the presence of clarity, direction, and power. The truth about stress is that it was never about the world being too much. It was about the mind being too scattered. The truth about stress is that it doesn't come from the outside, but from within. And the truth about stress is that the moment clarity returns, stress vanishes. The RPM formula is the path to that clarity. It is the blueprint for turning life's chaos into certainty. It is the method for taking back control, reclaiming focus, and stepping into a life where stress no longer dictates the terms of existence. The end of stress begins not with escape, but with mastery. And mastery begins here, with the RPM formula. Stress multiplies in the absence of direction. When the mind becomes consumed with problems, when it obsesses over what's going wrong, when it spins in endless circles of what if and why me, pressure builds until it feels unbearable. Problems have no finish line. They stretch endlessly, feeding anxiety, magnifying doubt, and smothering confidence. But the moment the focus shifts from problems to results, the game changes entirely. Results cut through chaos like a blade. They give the mind a destination, a finish line, a clear point of certainty. Stress says, I don't know how to handle this. Results ask, what must I create? This single shift dismantles the illusion of overwhelm. The human brain is not to endlessly juggle problems. It is designed to chase outcomes, to solve, to create, to move forward. When the mind stops obsessing over what is wrong and starts locking on to what must be achieved, stress has no ground to stand on. Think about it. The person drowning in stress is usually not drowning because life is impossible, but because focus is fractured. Their attention is scattered across dozens of problems, each one screaming for attention, each one pulling energy, each one demanding an answer. It's like standing in the middle of a storm with winds blowing from every direction. But the moment a result is declared, the winds align, a result is a command of the mind. This is where we're going. Suddenly, the storm has a direction. Suddenly, chaos is order. Results do not just reduce stress, they eliminate it at the root, because results transform perception. Problems are heavy, draining, and endless. Results are light, energizing, and fine. A problem says, this is wrong. A result says this will be created. A problem keeps the mind stuck in the past and present. A result pulls the mind into the future, into possibility, into action. Stress cannot exist in possibility. It can only survive in paralysis. The shift to results is not optional. It is the foundation of power. Without a result, there is only reaction. Reaction means living at the mercy of circumstances, pulled in every direction by demands, constantly fighting fires that never stop burning. But when a result is locked in, the fires no longer dictate the day. The result dictates the day, and that simple act of definition transforms everything. Results do more than provide clarity. They build momentum. The human nervous system craves progress. It doesn't matter how small progress creates energy. When a result is declared, the path toward it, however uncertain, becomes a source of strength. Stress loses its grip because the mind is no longer trapped in what's wrong. It is now obsessed with what's next. That obsession is liberating. It turns fear into fuel and pressure into power. The question then becomes simple. What is the result? Not the task, not the motion, not the checklist. Results are not about being busy, they're about being effective. Results mean asking, what is the actual outcome that matters most in the situation? What is the specific, clear, measurable thing I must create? Once that is defined, stress begins to dissolve, because now instead of 1,000 scattered worries, there is a singular target. The mind has one direction, one mission, one aim. This is why results are the first step in the RPM formula. Without results, there's no clarity, no certainty, no power. Without results, every action feels heavy, meaningless, endless. But with results, every action becomes purposeful. With results, even the smallest step carries weight because it contributes to something larger. Stress cannot survive in that environment. It starves when clarity is present. And here's the deeper truth. Results are not just about goals on paper. Results are about commanding the brain to stop living and start living in creation. Stress is reactive. Results are creative. Stress is passive. Results are active. Stress is endless. Results are finite. That's why the moment you declare a result, you are no longer a prisoner. You are a creator. The driving force begins here. Before purpose can ignite, before action can be mapped, there must be a result. It is the anchor that steadies the mind, the compass that gives direction, the light that pierces the fog of confusion. And once it is locked in, the weight of stress begins to vanish. Stress does not end when life gets easier. Stress ends when the mind commits to results. That clarity is freedom. That decision is the first strike against the chains that hold people down. Define the result, and stress has no chance to survive. Results create clarity, but clarity without fuel fades. A target without energy becomes nothing more than an idea. That is why the second step of the RPM formula is purpose. Purpose is the fire that transforms a result from a wish into a must. It is the force that converts intention into commitment, effort into persistence, and action into inevitability. Stress often multiplies not because the load is too heavy, but because meaning is too light. When actions feel meaningless, when the why is forgotten, life begins to feel like an endless treadmill. Motion without progress, tasks without fulfillment, effort without reward. Stress thrives in that emptiness. It magnifies every challenge, every obstacle, every inconvenience. Without purpose, the smallest setback feels crushing. With a purpose, even achievement feels hollow. But when purpose is ignited, everything changes. Purpose is not a luxury, it is oxygen. It is the invisible force that pulls instead of pushes, that drives instead of drags. When purpose is strong enough, stress loses its grip. The mind stops asking, can I handle this? And instead declares, I must. That shift from uncertainty to necessity is what separates those who break under pressure from those who thrive in it. Every person has felt the difference between doing something out of obligation and doing something out of passion. Obligation drains. Passion fuels. Obligation creates stress. Passion creates certainty. Purpose transforms even the heaviest tasks into meaningful pursuits. Suddenly, the late nights, the sacrifices, the discipline, all of it stops feeling like a burden and starts feeling like proof. Proof of commitment, proof of vision. Proof of strength. Purpose doesn't just make life bearable, it makes it beautiful, because purpose provides context. Challenges stop being punishments and become stepping stones. Stressful moments stop being weights and become tests. Obstacles stop being reasons to quit and become reasons to rise. Purpose reframes the entire experience of life, and in that reframing, stress has no place to survive. The question is not whether challenges will come. They will. The question is not whether difficulties will rise. They always do. The question is, why are you willing to face them? Why must this result happen? Why does it matter beyond comfort, beyond convenience, beyond the shallow victories of the moment? The deeper the answer, the greater the fuel. And the greater the fuel, the weaker stress becomes. Purpose is not found in vague desires. Purpose is not, I want to be successful, or I want to feel better. That is not fuel, that is smoke. Purpose comes from clarity. I will create this result because it defines who I am, because it secures my future, because it impacts those I love, because it fulfills the destiny I cannot ignore. That level of conviction burns through fear, cuts through excuses, and leaves no room for stress to dominate. Stress survives in a shallow why. It thrives in half-hearted effort and lukewarm commitment and surface-level intention. But when purpose digs deep, stress shatters. Because now the result is not negotiable. Now the action is not optional. Now the mission is not something that would be nice. It is something that must happen. Stress cannot intimidate a mind that has already decided. Stress cannot weigh down a heart that is pulled by something greater than itself. Purpose gives rise to resilience. With purpose, the setbacks that would break most people only sharpen resolve. With purpose, rejection becomes redirection. With purpose, failure becomes feedback. Purpose reframes the struggle as part of the story, not the end of it. And when that perspective takes hold, stress dissolves into drive. It is not that the load becomes lighter. It is that the meaning becomes heavier. And when meaning is heavy enough, the load no longer feels like a burden. It feels like a privilege. Every step, every effort, every sacrifice becomes a declaration. This matters. This is worth it. This is why I will not stop. This is the second step of the RPM formula, and it is non-negotiable. A result without purpose is fragile. It will collapse under pressure, abandoned at the first sign of difficulty. But a result fueled by purpose is indestructible. Stress cannot touch it. Doubt cannot break it. Fear cannot stop it. Purpose transforms results into destiny. And when destiny is on the line, there is no room for hesitation. Stress does not end when life gets easier. Stress ends when purpose becomes the anchor, when meaning becomes the fuel, when the fire within burns hotter than the pressure without. Purpose is the answer. Purpose is the fuel. Purpose is the power that makes stress irrelevant. Clarity through results gives direction. Purpose provides fuel. But direction and fuel mean nothing without motion. A powerful destination and a burning reason will remain empty dreams if no steps are taken to move forward. This is where the third part of the RPM formula emerges, the mass and action plan. Stress thrives in hesitation. It feeds on paralysis. The longer decisions are delayed, the more uncertainty grows. The longer action is postponed, the heavier the weight becomes. Stress whispers, you don't know enough yet. You're not ready. Wait until it's perfect. But that waiting is the very trap that chains people in overwhelm. Inaction magnifies fear. Inaction makes every challenge look bigger than it is. Inaction multiplies doubt until it feels like the mountain cannot be climbed. Momentum is the antidote. The moment motion begins, the grip of stress loosens, because motion creates feedback, and feedback creates clarity. While sitting still makes the problem seem infinite, taking action reveals that most problems are smaller than they appear. One step forward changes perspective. One step forward creates leverage. One step forward collapses the illusion that things are impossible. This is why a massive action plan is essential. Not a vague list, not a half-hearted attempt, not random effort scattered in every direction. A true action plan is precise. It is about breaking down the result into the most impactful steps and then committing to them with intensity. Action is not about doing more. It is about doing what matters most and doing it consistently. Stress is often born not because there's too much to do, but because the mind has not decided where to start. Tasks swirl endlessly, each one pulling energy, each one screaming for attention. But when an action plan exists, the noise quiets. Suddenly there is order. Suddenly there is sequence. Suddenly there is a clear path forward. And when there is a path forward, stress collapses. Momentum is not about speed. It is about consistency. A small step repeated daily creates more power than a massive leap attempted once. Stress fades not when everything is completed at once, but when progress is constant. Progress is the human need that destroys the grip of overwhelm. Because when progress is felt, energy rises. When progress is felt, confidence builds. When progress is felt, the brain shifts from fear into focus. The beauty of a massive action plan is that it makes results inevitable. With a result clearly defined and a purpose deeply rooted, the plan becomes the bridge. It transforms vision to movement, intention into reality. Stress no longer has room to breathe because every ounce of energy that once fueled worry now fuels action. The scattered mind becomes the disciplined mind. The paralyzed state becomes the moving force. It's important to understand. Massive action does not mean reckless action. It does not mean running in every direction, exhausting energy without progress. It means focused, intentional, targeted movement. It means asking, what are the 3 most important actions that will move me closer to my result today? And then attacking them with certainty. Stress weakens with every meaningful step forward until eventually it dissolves completely under the weight of momentum. When momentum takes over, something profound happens. Stress isn't just reduced, it is replaced. Replaced by excitement, replaced by drive, replaced by the certainty that comes from knowing movement is happening, that progress is being made, that the result is no longer an abstract possibility, but a living reality in motion. The very energy that once fueled stress is now redirected into momentum. The massive action plan is the safeguard against paralysis. It removes the uncertainty of, what do I do next? And replaces it with confidence. I know exactly what to do and I'm doing it now. That confidence doesn't just kill stress, it builds unshakable certainty, a certainty that says, no matter what happens, I move forward. No matter what comes, I take the next step. And that certainty is the foundation of power. Stress will always try to return. It will whisper in the background, waiting for hesitation, waiting for doubt, waiting for an action. But with results defined, with purpose fueling, with action driving momentum, stress has no space to control. It suffocates in the presence of clarity, conviction, and consistency. This is the power of momentum. The first step is the hardest, but once it is taken, the second becomes easier, the third even easier. And soon the weight that once felt unbearable transforms into energy that feels unstoppable. Stress is not destroyed by waiting. It is destroyed by moving. And the massive action plan is the weapon that ensures movement never stops. With clarity of results, with the fire of purpose, and with the momentum of action, stress has no place to survive. The storm of overwhelm collapses into certainty, and the path forward becomes undeniable. Stress is not an unstoppable force. It is not a permanent condition. It is not a life sentence. Stress is a fragile illusion that collapses the moment clarity, purpose, and momentum converge. The truth is simple: stress has no strength of its own. It is sustained only by confusion, hesitation, and disconnection. Remove those elements and stress cannot stand. Think about it. Stress is born in the absence of clarity. When no result is defined, when the mind is trapped in problems instead of outcomes, pressure builds endlessly. It feels like being stuck in a maze with no exit. Every turn leads to another dead end. Every problem gives rise to another worry. But the instant a result is declared, the maze shifts in a straight path. Direction emerges and stress loses its first foothold. Then comes purpose. Stress feeds on emptiness, on meaningless effort, on shallow motivation. Without a deep why, every challenge feels like punishment, every task feels like drudgery, and every sacrifice feels unbearable. But the moment purpose is ignited, struggle transforms into significance. The late nights, the discipline, the obstacles, they no longer feel like burdens. They become proof of commitment. Stress cannot survive in the presence of meaning. It dissolves when the heart is pulled by something greater than fear. And finally, momentum. Stress thrives in stillness. Inaction amplifies its voice. Hesitation strengthens its grip. The longer one waits, the louder the noise becomes. But action breaks the cycle. Even the smallest step weakens stress. Each move forward chips away at the illusion that life is unmanageable. Momentum transforms paralysis into progress, and progress is the ultimate antidote to overwhelm. Stress cannot coexist with consistent action. It collapses under the weight of movement. When results, purpose, and momentum unite, stress is cornered. It has nowhere left to hide. Its lies become visible. Its illusions fall apart. Suddenly, what once felt like a crushing weight becomes something entirely different. It becomes fuel. The same energy that once fed stress now drives clarity. The same pressure that once suffocated now sharpens focus. Stress doesn't just disappear. It transforms into power. It is important to realize that stress was never the enemy. It was the signal. Stress has always been the warning light. The alarm that the mind has lost sight of results. That purpose has been forgotten. That action has stalled. Once those elements are restored, the warning light no longer flashes. The system is back in alignment. Stress was never proof of weakness. It was proof of misalignment. And the RPM formula is the realignment. This is why the collapse of stress is not temporary. It is permanent when the formula becomes a way of life. Because clarity, purpose, and action are not one-time strategies. They are daily disciplines. Each day a result is declared. Each day purpose is remembered. Each day momentum is built. Stress has no opportunity to return. It is starved out of existence. Imagine living this way, not occasionally, not when things get overwhelming, but as a standard. Waking up with results defined, fueled by a purpose so strong that nothing can shake it. Moving forward with momentum that builds with every step. Stress would not just diminish, it would lose all authority. Challenges would still appear. Problems would still arise, but they would no longer control. They would no longer intimidate. They would be met with clarity, crushed by purpose, and dissolved by momentum. That is the collapse of stress. It doesn't end because life becomes easy. It ends because the mind becomes unshakable. It ends because the foundation is too strong. The fire is too intense. The motion is too constant for stress to survive. Stress was never real power. It was always the illusion of power. And illusions collapse the moment truth takes its place. The truth is this: stress has only ever thrived in the spaces left unguarded, in the absence of results, in the void of purpose, in the pause of inaction. But when those spaces are filled, stress has no space to breathe. The RPM formula does not just manage stress. It annihilates it. It takes the very foundation stress stands on and replaces it with clarity, meaning, and momentum. And when stress collapses, freedom begins. Freedom to focus, freedom to create, freedom to live without the chains of fear and the weight of overwhelm. Stress ends where mastery begins, and mastery begins with RPM. This is the moment where the decision must be made. Not tomorrow, not when things calm down, not when life becomes easier, because life will never simply hand over ease. The storms will not stop. The demands will not disappear. The pressure will not magically fade away. Waiting is the lie that stress uses to keep control. The truth is that everything changes the moment the decision is made to live by the RPM formula. Stress has ruled long enough and has stolen clarity, drained energy, and convinced countless people that life is too much, that they are not enough. But stress is nothing more than the byproduct of scattered focus, forgotten purpose, and delayed action. It is an illusion that crumbles the moment you declare your results, ignite your purpose, and commit to a massive action plan. That collapse does not begin later. It begins now. Now is the time to demand more of yourself, to stop reacting to life and start commanding it, to stop letting stress dictate your energy and start using clarity, meaning, and momentum to dictate your destiny. This is not about survival anymore. This is about power. This is about mastery. This is about stepping into the version of yourself that refuses to be chained down by hesitation, fear, or overwhelm. The RPM formula is not optional. It is essential. It is the difference between living as a victim of circumstances or living as the architect of outcomes. The difference between drowning in problems or rising above them with purpose. The difference between being paralyzed by stress or propelled by certainty. You already hold the formula. The only question left is whether you will use it. Declare your results. Do it now. Do not wait for the perfect conditions because they do not exist. The perfect time is the moment you decide. Ask yourself, what is the outcome that truly matters today? What is the one result that would change everything if it were achieved? Do not settle for vague hopes. but define it clearly, boldly, unapologetically. Then ignite your purpose. Ask yourself, why must this result happen? Why does it matter to me, to my future, to those I love, to the life I am building? What is at stake if I don't? Dig deep, because shallow reasons will not withstand pressure. Find the meaning that burns hotter than fear, that fuels persistence, that makes quitting impossible. When that purpose is locked in, stress loses its grip, because no obstacle can outweigh a reason that's strong. And finally, build your plan. Do not drown in endless tasks. Strip them down to what truly matters. Identify the steps that will create the most momentum, and then move. Not someday. Not when you feel ready. Move now. Because readiness is not a feeling. It is a decision. The very act of moving forward creates the readiness you think you lack. The choice is simple: continue living in the illusion of stress, or step into the power of clarity, purpose, and momentum. One path leads to exhaustion, paralysis, and regret. The other leads to certainty, energy, and freedom. The path you take is the one you choose in this moment. There will always be reasons to wait. There will always be excuses that whisper, not yet, not now, maybe later. But later is the language of limitation. Later is the chain that keeps you bound. Later is the lie that guarantees nothing will change. The only real choice is now. So make the declaration: refuse to hand over another moment of life to stress. Refuse to be a prisoner of hesitation. Refuse to be controlled by the weight of overwhelm. Instead, rise with results that give direction, with purpose that gives fire, with momentum that gives certainty. This is your turning point. Stress ends here. Not because life becomes lighter, but because you become stronger. Not because problems vanish, but because you no longer see problems. You see outcomes. You no longer feel trapped. You feel driven. You no longer wonder if you can. You know that you must. The RPM formula is more than a method. It is a revolution within the mind. It transforms fear into focus, chaos into clarity, and stress into strength. It takes the fragments of scattered energy and channels them into unstoppable momentum. And when that shift is made, nothing can stand in the way. So step forward, not halfway, not cautiously, but completely. Declare it, own it, live it. Stress ends where mastery begins. And mastery begins the moment you commit fully to results, purpose, and momentum. This is not a concept to admire. It's a command to follow. The choice is yours, and the time is now. Stress is over. Power begins.